called the percent proportion. And a proportion is just two equal fractions or two equal ratios. We've done them before, we just haven't called them proportions. So write this down because this is how we're going to start it. It says the percent over 100 equals is over of. So take a second to get that written down, and I'm going to show you how that works to solve these percent problems. So this proportion just tells you where you're going to write each of your numbers. So let me start off on my chalkboard here. So 10 is 25% of what number? So I'm going to start by writing the percent proportion down. Remember, it's percent over 100 equals is over of. Okay, but now, as I go through, I'm going to fill in numbers in the correct spot. So first off, the percent over 100 is the easiest part to fill in, because if you notice, you already have 25% here, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is write 25 over 100. Basically, what you do is you're writing the percent as a fraction. That's it. Now, the is over of. All right, check this out. In the problem, we have an is number, and 10 is, and of what number is our of number? We don't know that number. So watch what that means in my percent proportion. So remember up here, you see how is on top? The is number goes on top, the 10. The of number, of what number, we don't know, so I'm going to make it, you can make it a question mark, you can make it an empty box. I'm going to make it a variable. So basically, we have to figure out this equal ratio problem. So 25 over 100 equals 10 over x. Now to do this, I can figure out, if I want, how to go from 25 to 10. So 25 divided by what is 10? So you might be able to figure that out. But remember our rule from the previous chapters. If you don't like the numbers I give you, try reducing this fraction. So if you think of 25 over 100, if you were to reduce that, that actually reduces to 1/4. And I'm going to bring down my equals 10 over x. Now once you get it reduced, it's going to be much easier. So 1 times 10 is 10. 4 times 10 is 40. So the answer to my question is 40. Remember the question said 10 is 25% of what number? Well, we can check it by finding 25, by finding 25% of 40. And if you typed in 25% of 40, you'd get 10. So 10 is 25% of 40. All right, so we did that one together. Don't worry if you're a little confused, because we're going to try a couple down below together. The main thing is this percent proportion here that you should have written down. We're going to be using it. So, all right, we are going to start with problem A. So A, I actually want you to do with me. So I have it set up, and we're going to start with the percent proportion. Now, I'm going to rewrite it here. You don't have to rewrite it again because it's on your page. So remember, percent over 100 equals is over of. All right, so here's where we're going to do problem A. First off, the percent is 50%. So your first job is to write that over 100. So you have 50 over 100. Now remember, equals is over of. So we have our is number, 30 is. And our of number, of what number? So when we write that, remember 30 is the is number, so it goes on top. Of what number? We don't know, so I'm going to put an x. All right, so this is the first thing you should have. We have our numbers in the right spot. But now we have to solve. So look at here, going from 50 to 30. Well, you could probably figure that out, but it doesn't divide. 50 divided by no nice number is 30. So remember, we're going to try our reduce thing here. Now, you can type in 50 over 100, or you might know it reduces to 1/2. But let me show you, you don't actually have to reduce it all the way. What if you just divided them by 10? What if you actually just reduced it to 5/10. You can still do it. Check it out. So 5 times 6 is 30, right? And what's 10 times 6? You'll get x equals 60, which is your answer. All right, now I'll show you real quick. You could have done the same thing if you had reduced 50 over 100 to 1/2. So if I did 1 times 30 is 30, 2 times 30 is 60. So x would still equal 60. But my point was you don't always have to reduce the fraction all the way. All right, so we're going to try another one. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to try problem B completely on your own. So pause the video, do problem B, and when you restart it, I'll go over it. Okay, go. All right, guys, you ready for problem B? So this time, I'm not going to write down the percent proportion, because remember, you guys have it in your book. But here's what you should have. So percent over 100, 20 over 100, equals is over of. And 60 is our is number of what number? We don't know. So 60 over we don't know. Now, as you solve it, I don't need to reduce this one. You could, but check it out. You notice 20 times 3 is 60? What's 100 times 3? It's 300. So our answer is x equals 300. That's the answer to B. Now, we are going to do problem C together because you haven't seen one with the real world application. So it's a little bit different than percent over 100 equals is over of. So when I write that down, I'm going to write it again. I actually want you to add what I'm about to add. I want you to add it in your notes at the top. So in a real world problem, the is over of is going to change to something part over whole. Now, it's not going to say the word part and whole. You just have to know which number is the part, which number is the whole. So watch as we do C. First, let's read it. It says, Peyton spent 60% of her money to buy a new television. So there's her percent, by the way. If the television cost 300, so the television cost 300, how much money did she have? All right, so let's get this filled in. So first off, the percent over 100 is the same. 60 over 100. Now, since it's real world, they don't have the word is and of in it. So you have to think which is part, which is whole. So look at this. It says the television cost 300. We have to figure out how much money did she have. Well, the television's cost is only part of the money. The money she had is the total, the whole amount that she had. So that means the 300 is the part. And the whole, we don't know. Remember, that's how much money did she have, and we're trying to figure that out. Now, you can solve the, you could reduce the fraction if you want, but I notice in this one that 60 times 5 is 300. So I do 100 times 5, and I get my answer of 500. Now, remember, since it's real world, we want to label how much money did she have? She had $500. All right, so the only difference in real world is you have to know is the part, of is the whole. Okay, let's go on to the next page. Now, going through example 3 and 4, we're actually not going to go through them because they're basically the same thing we were just doing. So if you look here, if I put on my pointer, they have part over whole equals percent over 100. They have it in reverse. That's fine. It doesn't really matter if you put the percent over 100 on the right. I just like percent over 100 equals part over whole. So we're going to go down and just do some practice problems here. So here's what I want you to do. I basically want you to try D, E, F, and G, all 4 problems, using the percent proportion. Now you have a couple options. If you're confident on basically what you saw so far, do all 4 on your own and then just watch the video and see if you were right. If you're not sure, you're a little shaky, you can kind of do some of them with me, but I want you to at least try a couple on your own. All right, so if you're going to do them all, pause it now and get started. If you're going to do some with me, well, just stick with me. All right, so problem D. These are all the generic ones, so you can use percent over 100 equals is over of. So let's get started. D says 75 is 15% of what number? So 15 over 100 equals is, remember 75 is, of what number? All right, so it's going to be 75 is our is, of what number? We don't know. Okay, so see if you have it. Now remember, if you're doing this with me, you might want to pause if you're getting behind. Don't try writing when I'm talking. Now, I have to figure out 15 times what is 75. Now, if you don't know this, just do 75 divided by 15, and you'll get that number. So anyway, I do know that 15 times 5 is 75. 100 times 5 is 500. So the answer to D is 500. All right, let's try E. I'm going to go a little bit quicker here. So 36 over 100. 9 is over what number? We don't know. Now to get this one, 36 to 9, we divide by 4. 36 divided by 4 is 9. And 100 divided by 4, x is 25. All right, let's try F. So in F, 70%, so 70 over 100. And is over of, so 7 is of what number? We don't know. Now in this one, I know 70 divided by 10 is 7. 100 divided by 10 is 10. So x equals 10. Now, if you were doing those three with me, then now I do want you to pause it and try G completely on your own before you watch it. If you did them all on your own, just keep watching. All right, so in problem G, so we have 35%, so it's 35 over 100, equals is, 7 is, of what number? We don't know. That becomes an x. So 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. X equals 20. All right. Last page, I think we have a real world example. Let's see how you did, or how you do. So remember, when we do a real world example, instead of is over of, we have part over whole. So let's start by reading it. This says, before 1982, pennies were 95% zinc and 5% copper. Uh-oh, they're throwing a couple percents at me. This could be confusing. So 95% zinc, 5% copper. Okay. If 100 pennies minted in 1980 have an approximate mass of 15 grams of copper. All right, 15 grams of copper. What is the total mass of 100 pennies? All right. So here's what's tricky about this one. Is we know it's percent over 100, right? But they give us 2%. They give us 95%, and that's the zinc. They give us 5%, and that's the copper. So the question is, which one do we use? So if we look down here, see what else the problem told us. It said these 100 pennies have a mass of 15 grams of copper. They're not talking about the zinc. They're talking about the copper. So that means we do not want to use the zinc. We want to use the copper percent. This wants to know what's the total mass of 100 pennies. So let's start with the percent. 5 over 100, because 5% of a penny is copper. Now, we know that the weight of the copper is 15 grams. So the 15 is the part, because it's just how much the copper weighs. The total mass of the pennies would be the whole, and we don't know that. That's what we need to find out. So in this one, if I were solving it, I know 5 times 3 is 15. 100 times 3 would be 300. Now, since it says what's the total mass, the mass in this problem is measured in grams, so that means X is 300 grams. That one is tricky because they threw a lot of numbers you don't need in it, so don't get stressed over that. Now, when you go down, if you're absent and you're working on the problems below, in number 1 and 2, notice it says use double number lines. Don't use double number lines. Just do the percent proportion. Percent over 100 equals is over of. So